Anyway,
So, Waleed. Is it Waleed? How you pronounce it?
I was born Gregory Michael Kavalec. I changed it to Gregory Waleed Kavalec when I came to Islam.
Oh, okay. So, where did that story start? Where were you born?
I was born in Cleveland, Ohio.
Nice.
And I came down here to Texas when my paycheck started bouncing back in Cleveland. That was my first clue that there might be other places I'd rather be working. And the job situation at that time in the north of the U.S. was very bad. This was around 1980, 81. And Houston was boomtown, so Houston is where I came.
Okay.
Got a job very quickly in the computer industry as a computer operator and worked my way up. Became a systems programmer. Just kept the usual middle-class story. Worked my way up the ranks. And eventually became a reasonably well-known computer professional. Did a little bit of side work. Just worked for companies. Started my own company. I got the house in the Woodlands. Bought my wife a Volvo. All the typical middle-class stuff. And then came about that I was going through a divorce. And while I was going through the divorce, I decided to see, hey, I'm Greg Kavalec. Let's see what kids are smoking these days. It can't hurt me. I smoked everything there was back in the 70s. So I tried to see what they were smoking these days. And it wasn't quite the same stuff.
The only reason you're in handcuffs going to jail and getting some...
That's basically what happened to me. Very well timed. I very quickly became an addict. And at that time, when that part of the story started, I had my own company, as I mentioned, and I had $100,000 in a retirement account. By the time the dust settled, basically, I became a guest in the state of Texas. That means I went to jail. And it wasn't a Hollywood-type prison where everybody's, where there's constant, riots and everything like you see in the movies. But this is a jail for kindergarten kind of criminals, but it's still not a very nice place.
Yeah.
As I tell people, it's not a good vacation spot. The help is very rude. While there, I had one thing happened is I got clean of drugs because there weren't any drugs to speak of. And Ramadan came around, and in the Texas prison system, they respect religions and they give the folks on Ramadan special feeding schedules, and they also let the Muslim inmates, mostly African American Islam, invite people to learning sessions for Islam, and I got invited to one. It was a chance to get out of the cell block for a little while, so of course I took it. And they said the Azan, and somebody recited Al-Fatiha, and tears started coming down my face. And that was the beginning. Something touched me in that room, and I went back and I spent the rest of my time inside studying the Quran. It was a Yusuf Ali translation. Obviously, I didn't suddenly learn Arabic, but I was reading what I could. And I'd also like to make a side note that I was sitting there in a room full of felons crying like a baby, and word of that never got back to my cell block. That's because the people I was sitting with were Muslims. And I came out of prison at that time still married to an active addict. So I would like to tell you that the golden light had filled the room and I was cured of drug addictions forever. Not quite that simple. It took about 3 days for me to get back in my old patterns because I was hanging out with the same old people. As your own talks indicate, if we hang out with good people, we end up to pick up good habits. If we hang out with not such good people, we end up to pick up their habits as well. And that's, of course, the situation I was in. But I already had, the seed had been planted. I understood a lot of the Quran. I knew that there was something better than what I was doing. And it wasn't too long later that I realized that I needed to get help. And the first place I checked for help was I went to a masjid. And I officially took my Shahada. Again,
Nobody helped you become a Muslim. You did it on your own.
This is me. This is because of the Quran. I was blessed to come to Islam via the Quran. And I can't stress that enough. The Quran is that powerful. it took a couple more years of standing up and falling down before I augmented my Islam with a 12-step program and got completely free of alcohol and drugs. Well, actually, I'd gotten free of alcohol before I came out of jail, and I never touched alcohol because the Quran specifically says alcohol is a tool of the devil. Avoid it if you would prosper. But as a drug addict, I knew that there was a little loophole there because he never mentions cocaine. That's drug thinking. That's the way drug addicts act. If you ever have to deal with a drug addict, remember that that is the way the drug affects the brain.
Right.
It will look for any loophole it can. So, finding a 12-step program, which I don't know if you have them back in Pakistan, they're very valuable. They're actually a westernized version of Islam, but don't tell AA or CA or any of those organizations that because they might lose members. Because the basic principle of Alcoholics Anonymous is to recognize that there's only one power that can take us out of addiction and make a decision to surrender our life and will to that power. Well, surrendering to our Creator is also known as Islam. I've told people that. Not everybody in AA wants to believe it, but that's just the way it works. Once that happened, I was on my way to being a reasonably decent human being. Continued my course of studying Islam every way I can, and I also sponsored others in the 12-step programs, and I did some more research and discovered, lo and behold, there was a Muslim 12-step program. It's been here in the U.S. since the late 1980s. It's called Milati Islami. Milati Islamic World Services is centered out of Atlanta, Georgia, but there's small branches of it all over the country, mostly on the East Coast. And while I was recovering from drug addiction, I spent a lot of time, especially at nights, especially while I was still married to my then wife, who was an addict, basically studying the Quran and studying the various translations of the Quran. So I started to collect these translations into a little Access database. Microsoft Access was basically souped-up spreadsheets for people who didn't have a real database. But it worked for me. So if I wanted to really understand what a verse said, since I still didn't have a grasp of Arabic, I could see it in 4 translations, then eventually became 6 translations. When I got to 8 translations, I decided I wanted to share that, and I put it out as a website called Islam Awaken. And if you go there and you pick a verse, you see now, at that time it was 8 translations. Now it's the Arabic, the transliteration, and about 50 translations per verse. I've continued to work on that project in my spare time. And after I was clean and sober and Muslim for 7 years, I like it to compare it to, well, I'm not comparing myself to the Prophet Musa, but when he was escaping from the Egyptians, he had to work for his father-in-law for 7 years before he was given a wife. I was finally given a real wife after 7 years of being a clean and sober Muslim, and that's the wife I have now. Her name's Habiba. And make up for my inability to speak languages, she's a woman who speaks 7 languages. So Allah has definitely blessed me in many ways. That pretty much takes you up to the present day. I don't know what else to add to it. Thank you.
The tattoo's missing.
The tattoo happened long before I got to jail. It just means truth. It's Chinese. I thought it would be something cool to have. That was actually happened before I got too deep into the drug world. I was just being a wild and crazy, typical white American. You know, getting in my middle-age crazies. That's what happens to people when they turn 40, at least those of us of the male persuasion. And I don't know, even in the depths of drug addiction and whatnot, I still believed in truth. And I think that's something that helped carry me through and helped me grab a hold of Islam and let it take root in me, because as I learned later on, Al-Haq, the truth, is one of the names of Allah. And it's always meant something to me. What else do you want to know?
That's all. Thank you so much. So much. Honored meeting you.